Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Thursday, April 24th, 2025. Hey, we're going to get a 25-25 tomorrow. Boy, I thought last Friday was Good Friday. This is, I don't know. We're going to all hit the lottery, and I guess we're going to split it 25 ways. So, money's money. We'll take it, right? Okay, that'll all be helpful. I imagine it will later be, I don't know, somehow seized by the Trump administration or something like that, because you can't have it. It's all for me. All right, lots to catch up on. The fire hose of insanity continues. I've probably put more stories that should be blazing 10-alarm fires in gigantic, bold print headlines in the newspapers in pocket in the last 12 hours than, I don't know, certainly than any other 12-hour span. I don't know. It's getting crazy out there. Greg has a raft of stories for us to catch up on, and a lot of those are 10-alarm ones as well. Man, there's a lot. Justice just sort of checking in the morning in the background, telling me what's on his mind as well. Pete Hegseth. Essentially, I don't know. I'll just spit this one out here. The New York Times has a story on it. I don't know whether we'll get a chance to even, briefly digest it today or not. But it does say Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth had the consumer messaging app Signal. That's kind of a weird way of referring to it. It makes sense. Nothing wrong with that description. But when they say commercial messaging app Signal, like people who thought they knew what Signal was and do, but don't use it and have no experience with it, are now saying commercial messaging. Like, is that, I don't understand exactly what they mean by that. It's commercially available and it's a messaging app. You had it right. But Hegseth had the Signal app set up on a computer in his office at the Pentagon so that he could send and receive instant messages in a space where personal cell phones are not permitted, according to two people with knowledge of the matter. That is to say, this is usually a phone-based app. People use it for messaging. I mean, I guess there is a desktop version of it. I didn't even know that. But I'm not interested in Signal. I have it on my phone. I've not used it. I've got my username, etc., in case we all have to move to that at some point in the future. Although now I don't know how safe that is. If all of the Trump people are there too, who knows what they're scooping up. Anyway, the point is, the reason cell phones are not permitted in these areas of the Pentagon is spies. Now, I've always thought that Mike Flynn, who I always refer to as a notorious international spy, I had always thought that his firing during the Obama administration, when he was, as I had heard the story, head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, had something to do with this, in addition to him having been pretty much identified as a crazy idiot by everyone around him who worked with him. He too was just trying to evade the strict controls on communications protocols that are designed as counter-espionage, so that we don't lose control of our information. It should be difficult if you need to exfiltrate, in fact, information from inside the Pentagon to an outside source. We're going to try and make it a pain in the ass so that it doesn't get done accidentally, and so that we just don't make anything easy for spies. They shouldn't be able to sit at their desk and do their spy craft. They should have to put on a trench coat and a weird hat and sunglasses and walk around and find drop boxes, something like that. Anyway, as it turns out, now we can all pass around the same posts here too. Pete Hegseth is a spy. I don't know what he's doing, but he's certainly not keeping the information secure or secret, for that matter. Not only is it leaking, but he's, once again, like Mike Flynn was doing, working actively and making people do the job for him, engineering ways for him to get around counter-espionage roadblocks easily. And that's not something you want in the defense secretary. There's plenty of communications channels for him and plenty of people he can direct to have those communications for him if he can't do it securely from his desk or insecurely. Is it insecurely? He's insecure, I'm sure, but so are his communications. Anyway, that was not anticipated to be top of the list today, but it jumped to the front of the line. And also waiting to jump to the front of the line, Greg Dworkin, except he was in line first, so that is fine. And let's see, we got a couple other experimental fanfares we can try for you today,
try one.
Greg.
Go ahead.
And this one...
It can't be any worse than the ones you've already used.
Anything can be worse than something I've done, but only barely. I hold myself out as second place. All right, so these are some nostalgia ones, I guess, and we'll see whether I'm going to stop it in the middle of the song. We'll see whether this rings a bell for you at all. It's not a given, but the time, I think, frame is right. So, all right, let's see what we got here. Scott sent me this one here. Nice. Do you recognize that at all?
That sounds like the lion roaring from like MGM.
True. This now, as it happens, it's attached to a whole song. It's a cartoon theme song.
Animaniacs.
No, earlier than that. See if this makes any sense. This one is not one I have heard, but it may have. It wasn't a long running series or anything, but it had a good fanfare.
Roar, 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 minus the lion harness. Roar,
no, okay.
Roar,
I like this part.
That's how our show gets started.
I like that part. That's how our show gets started. No, you never heard that. That was I think only a couple of years, and it was like a serial connected promotional cartoon. but I don't know. I like certainly the timpani drums and the fanfare is all there.
Okay.
So we'll go for that one.
Know, we got
it all
to work with.
Sure. Okay. And I don't have that one backwards, but I do have the ringtone, the the Skype ringtone backwards, and it is intriguing. But we'll wait for the end of that. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. So this is a piece called "The Prophet's Paradox."
Oh.
The Prophet's Paradox can undermine public support for proactive measures. The very effectiveness of these interventions creates a perception that they were unnecessary. This is a Cassandra thing from the Greek.
Yes. Oh, right. Profits, not the monetary profits.
Right. As the dire outcomes they prevented are never realized. Consequently, policymakers face a challenging dilemma. The better they manage a potential crisis, the more likely it is that the public will perceive their actions as overreactions. Classic example is Y2K. You bring up all the issues, you take care of them, it doesn't happen. Oh, you were overreacting. Everybody knows that because it wasn't a crisis. Well, duh. Yeah. It wasn't a crisis because everybody fixed it before it was a crisis.
Yeah.
And
so to a limited extent with COVID.
Say, politicians are paid to deal with emergencies, not to avoid them, because if you avoid them, you don't look like you did anything.
Yes. That has a lot of application.
But if you are out there like Andrew Cuomo talking about COVID every day, people perceive you as a leader because look at you, you're handling the issue. What if
you're around the issue?
But what if a leader had actually prevented COVID from happening?
Yes. Well, then or maybe a better example there, side by side with COVID, the Ebola thing, and how Republicans tried to capitalize on Obama actually dealing with it. Like, we can tamp down on this so that we don't have an Ebola outbreak in our country. Wow, that's overreaction.
How
crazy.
How about measles? Oh, yeah, wait.
No. Right. Exactly. And then, well, there are a lot of different examples, I'm sure, around medical issues. That's probably the whole field. Whole field is aimed at let's not have these things happen.
Yeah, there's this thing called preventative medicine.
I knew.
Well, let's just
came up with something.
Let's somehow or other make money off of this. We'll call it wellness, sell you crap. It's not really preventative because it doesn't treat any specific illness, as all the disclaimers note. But it sounds good.
Yeah, and preventative medicine is actually keeping you healthy, so you won't know. So
let's do Tibetan sea salt treatments, and let's do, in an earlier era, you could go down to Mexico and have bogus cancer treatments that didn't work. And, of course, ivermectin, which never has lost fashion with MAGA.
Yeah.
But, you could also do this from an economics point of view. You could say tariffs are bad, don't do them, things will collapse and people
Hmm.
don't listen. And then you do them. And then, why do you keep talking about this? I don't see anything happening. Well, just a reminder to people,
Okay.
uh, our global supply chain, our
Oh,
domestic
that
supply
again.
chain in many different ways is really intriguing if you actually look and study it at all. Take coal,
Yeah,
for
I
example,
agree. All right.
right?
Please.
How does
Yeah, tell
coal
them.
get from where it's taken out of the ground to where it's used? Well, there's these miles long trains that are like constantly moving.
Yes.
And if there's a train strike, for example, you may have a coal supply, but it's going to be used up. So you
Hmm.
don't feel it on the first day of the strike, but you might feel it on the 10th day of the strike.
Oh, yes.
And
Okay.
in the same way, there are all these ladies and gentlemen on all the ships at sea. There's ships at sea with goods on them coming from China, but it takes 30 to 45 days to get to where it's going. Maybe 30 days to get to the West Coast, maybe 45 days to get to New York. So
Yeah.
if China suddenly stops sending us stuff, you
Right.
don't really feel it for 30 to 45 days because that's when the shelves start to come
I
bare.
see. Right. But
So
star
April
goes
2nd,
nova. You don't know it for a couple hundred years.
right. So April 2nd is Liberation Day. That's when the tariffs started.
Okay.
And today is April 24th. Okay, that's
Ah.
only 22 days. You got another 2 weeks before you start to feel it, and another 3 or 4 weeks before you really
Hmm.
feel it.
Hmm.
So wait till May is what I'm saying, and certainly wait till June. But mid-May, all of a sudden, the shelves are going to start to go bare, and you're going to
Hmm.
go, "What happened?" And even if you reverse it and say, "Okay, it was a mistake, I need to fix it," it's still
Ah.
going to take
Yeah.
another
Then you
30
fight.
days
Right.
for those
Right.
goods to come back. So it's an irreversible problem that we're going to see in a couple of weeks that people don't realize is coming. But you can read the prophets, if you will. You can read about the people who follow transport and say, you know what, trucking uh,
Hmm.
volumes in terms of what's loaded on hugely down. Hasn't been this low since the pandemic.
Ah.
Goods are
Oh.
not shipping. Goods are not traveling. Goods are not being transported.
That's true. That's a
And
good
and
downstream
therefore
effect
therefore goods are
to
not
point out.
going to show up in stores relatively soon. Uh, there was a person that I think we covered yesterday, Juliet Kayan,
Yes. You
who was
mentioned
on
her.
Greg Sargent's show.
Right.
And,
And she left.
she's very good at national security and such. She's a national security analyst
Okay.
and writes 2 hours ago. Those of us who know about logistics have been sounding the alarm about Trump's tariff policy because of the nature of supply chains and maritime delivery. Trump is folding because demand is about to exceed supply. Follow the empty boats.
Hmm.
30 days is coming.
Yeah. Okay. I get
Very
the
smart.
idea.
Yeah.
The supply chain is kind of fascinating. I hadn't really, I had seen hints that this was going to happen, but as I'm thinking about it now, of course, in addition to shortages of goods, there's going to be some unhappy Trump people. The
Yeah.
truck drivers that love Trump and love when
Yeah.
he gets in them and tries to honk the horn using the wrong mechanism too, by the way. But
Right.
yeah, nothing for them to do. No containers for them to haul. Longshoremen. There's going to be, I would assume, layoffs of hardworking blue collar American roughnecks pretty
Right.
soon.
Now, Twitter describes this as a community post on economics and manufacturing. It's posted by Molson Hart. Might
Okay.
even says mod next to him, so he's been modified or he's a moderator. Can't tell. The White House has put itself and the country in a bad situation, but doesn't realize it yet. Around April 10th, China to U.S. trade shutdown. Takes about 30 days for containers to go from China to L.A., 45 to Houston, 45 to Chicago, 55 to New York. That means there are no economic effects of what was done on April 10th until around May 10th. About that time, it's already started to happen. Trucking work dries up. Warehouses do layoffs because no labor is needed to unload containers.
Mm.
Products will be out of stock. All this will start in the LA area. After about 2 weeks, it'll hit Chicago and Houston. Let's say the White House, after 3 weeks, changes its mind on May 31st. This isn't working. Tariffs back to zero. And China says bygones be bygones. We'll go back to how things were. And every factory in China that got screwed over by the Reuters says the same thing, no problem. Even under the most favorable conditions of China and the factories restarting everything, it takes another 30 days for economic activities revived. And in Chicago, Houston, you got to wait another 45 days.
Yeah.
So New York will still be getting containers from before April 10th. They have 50 days. The whole situation's like lockdowns. Once you shut down, it takes a long time to get economic activity back to where it was, if you ever can. And this assumes China, is friendly. It's almost like we're speeding towards a brick wall, but the driver of the car doesn't see it yet. By the time you do, it's too late to hit the brakes. So that's what's coming. People need to understand it. And just because people say it now and you don't feel it doesn't mean it's not coming. And if we were prophets who were listened to, unlike Cassandra, and everything was reversed, it would still be a bit of pain, but it wouldn't be that bad. And then people would say, you were overselling the case. But no, you don't understand. Taking preventative efforts to fix things before they happen is smart, even if it's not good politics.
Yeah, well,
some things you do, even if it's not good politics. And on that note, let's look at the general. No, let's look at the specifics, because I brought it up, and then let's go back to the general.
Yeah, you brought it up. All right.
I brought it up.
I don't know what
Fox News poll
has to do with it, but okay, yeah.
Trump's job approval, 44 positive, 55 negative.
Fox.
44 is actually lower than Trump won. So remember, I used to say the only president Trump is more popular than is Trump?
Yes.
That's not even true anymore.
Oh, well.
Trump 2 is less popular than Trump 1 at this stage.
The sequel sucks.
And the thing about Fox News poll is that it's on Fox News. Everybody who watches Fox News sees it.
That's
and they had
true.
a graphic showing that Trump and Trump were less popular than Biden, Obama, and W. Three presidents they hate. Maybe they hate W most of all. Hard to know. Probably Obama. But they hate W because I don't know why. I know why I do, but I don't know why they do. But they do.
True. A little difficult to understand, but okay.
However, the important part, border security. Trump is 55-40 positive.
From Fox, anyway, yeah.
Well, Fox is a very good poll.
They do. They don't tend to skew their stuff. They just certainly among Fox viewers, he's more popular than 55.
But let me tell you about the other things.
Okay.
Border security, which is at this point in time not the highest thing in the world for people.
Okay.
As far as what they care about. They give Trump credit for border security because number of people coming to the country has dropped, partially because nobody wants to be here. Immigration, approved 47, disapproved 48. Trump is underwater on immigration, even if by a point it is no longer the Stephen Miller bragging about the 80-20 issue that drives the Trump administration. Guns, 41 approved, 44 disapproved. Foreign policy, 40-54. Taxes, 38-53. The economy, the big one, 38-56. Tariffs, 33-58. And just wait, that's going to get worse. Inflation, 33-59. That's going to get worse too. Scarcity of products, prices go up. Duh.
Yeah.
So the Trumpies on Twitter, say, "Oh, why would you believe a Fox poll?" Wait, what? What?
Did they say that?
Yeah.
That's funny. All right. We're going to
put
them in a bind.
New York Times. Trump's approval rating has been falling steadily. Polling average shows will go from the small to the big. President Trump's approval rating has sunk to about 45%, down from 52 1 week after he took office. American presidents typically enter office with a groundswell of support that wanes over time, but Trump's approval has been dropping slightly faster than that of his predecessors. He started with the second lowest approval rating for a president in modern history. The only recent president to have started in a worse position than Trump was Trump.
Well, he's breaking all the records.
The polling average assembled by the New York Times includes nearly all publicly released polls that track Trump's approval rating. I have more on that from Adam Carlson, a reformed pollster. The average does not directly address the causes. On average, across all polls, Mr. Trump's numbers continue to fall after he issued sweeping global tariffs and what he called Liberation Day. It's
Hmm.
too early to fully capture how an event like that has shaped public opinion. I say it's doomed him, and there's nothing he can do about it now because of those
Yeah, maybe
uh,
it'll be interesting to see when
because of
and
the
if he
supply chain
decides
things
to
that
reverse
he doesn't
things.
understand and therefore can't address, and even if he does, it's too
Oh,
late.
I mean, he's tied it so tight around his neck. There's no
Right?
ducking it now.
Even some of his supporters, says the New York Times, have registered concerns. Polls show little drop in his support among Republican voters. Much of the decline has come from voters who identify as independent. Well, those are the people who win elections, folks.
That's what we keep being told.
His standing with that crucial voting bloc, they all must live in Waukesha, stood at 41% and 46% disapproval in January. In Quinnipiac's mid-April poll, 58% of independents say they disapprove,
That is a large
up
number.
from 46,
Yeah.
and only 36 approve. Pollsters still struggle to fully gauge the strength of Trump's support because pre-election polls underestimated Trump on average by around 3 points. But even the polls that most accurately assess his support, such as Atlas Intel, show net negative approval ratings. Trump sees his second term as a resounding success. He's an asshole who doesn't know how to read polls. That's why. And he simply cannot accept anything that says that he's not. I don't fault him for that. That's just the way he is. I fault the media for playing along. Adam Carlson, Reform pollster, writes on Twitter, 10-day average Trump approval rating on April 2nd, Liberation Day, compared to now. Overall, April 2nd, minus 2.9. Now, minus 7.1.
Oh.
So since the tariffs, which are a huge win for America, he's dropped
Oh,
5
yeah.
points. Economy was minus 8.5, now minus 11.5. Inflation minus 14, now minus 22. Tariffs minus 14, now minus 17. So over the last, let's say, 3 weeks, he's dropped 2 or 3 points in most stuff except inflation, which he's dropped hugely, bigly. And again, worse things are coming mid-May. So just, prepare for it.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see whether he tries to either duck this thing or the other competing theory I've heard people say. And in fact, I just got a email note about it the other day from frequent correspondent and listener Jeremy Freiberger, who was saying,
Hi,
this is
Jeremy.
it's a frequent tactic that Trump uses, to cause a problem and then uncause it and say, see, I've fixed a problem.
Only I can fix it. But
Yeah.
the thing is, he
But
can't.
this one, I mean, he's spent so much time telling everybody in such certain terms that tariffs are not only are they great, but everybody who didn't use them is stupid. It's the
And I'm not
key to
changing my mind on it.
prosperity. Right. And and everybody misunderstands tariffs but me, and they were the
And
golden
everybody
age of America.
misunderstands the
And,
idea that,
yeah.
China's the situation isn't going to last. They think
Right.
it's because I'm going to go back on tariffs. They don't understand China's going to fold and go away and
Oh,
move to
yeah.
Mars or some other planet,
Sure. Yeah.
So it's crazy. It's nuts. But,
Yeah, it'll
that's
be
another
interesting to
thing.
watch at the minimum, and I don't doubt that he would try it anyway. Because anybody who says no, I won the election and here are fake electoral college certificates to prove it, or I won 9-0 from the Supreme Court that I just lost in 9-0. I guess he could just say anything, but this one, I don't know how anybody in the country could say, oh yeah, no, he was always against tariffs.
Well, according to these poll numbers, it's not working.
Oh,
And the
good.
other interesting thing, the one, point he has is immigration. On April 2nd, he had a 6-point lead on immigration. Now he's got a 2-point lead. And again, in some polls, most recent polls, he's actually underwater on it. So
Okay.
that gets back to my weekly rant, Monday, Wednesday rants about Democrats not running away from Abrego Garcia. In fact, it turns out to be good politics. Not only is it good politics because, the theory of the case works, but the polls are now starting to support the idea that Democrats are right to hammer on this. It's
Okay.
working. And as a matter of fact, Josh Kraushaar, who is a very a conservative columnist, used to write for National Journal, and then I think he was at Axios for a while, and now, if I'm not mistaken, he's at Jewish Insider,
Oh.
where he writes about the Middle East and other issues that, from an American point of view.
And
Josh
pastrami.
Krashower writes, Trump's net disapproval on immigration is a telltale sign the administration is talking about the Fox poll handling of Abrego Garcia has backfired, and the Democratic theory of the case is right.
Yep. And Stephen Miller continues to get on TV and say it's upside down backwards from everything everybody understands. And
right.
Okay.
And so exactly. So when you see those numbers and then you see the Times writing it up, the issue written up in Washington Post, Trump's economic numbers turn dismal. It's not just Wall Street worried about tariffs. Main Street is clearly very worried.
The two streets.
That's an analysis by Aaron Blake.
Okay.
And the latest tone shift on tariffs is an apparent attempt to steady an increasingly rocky economic picture. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, signaled there could soon be a de-escalation in the huge and growing trade war with China. He didn't. What he did, he talked to a bunch of big money people behind closed doors privately, as if they are somehow entitled to the kind of economic information that moves Wall Street that they're entitled to, but the rest of the public isn't. Having a closed-door briefing on this is outrageous in and of itself, but the least of the scandals in the Trump administration.
True.
And in any case, he said he doesn't think that the situation in China is sustainable. And so people interpreted that as, Trump is going to back off. Then Trump said he's not going to back off. And China this morning said things aren't changing. We are where we are. We are not moving.
Yeah, they're not. They don't seem to be.
So we'll see how that affects the market today. Open in just a few minutes.
And it's not just the signals I see from China, and who knows what it may be behind the scenes there, but not only are they not interested in engaging in Trump's idea of negotiations, they're actually quite insulted. And they really, they're like, we can only start with an apology. And you know how that is to get out of Trump.
They're an authoritarian state, and they can't afford to back off. That's just like it.
Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. You're able to hear this program because we shipped it to you 45 days ago, and it's just finally arriving. We know about supply chains here.
Yes, well, what was the Felix Frankfurter line? Wisdom comes so seldom that one should never blame somebody if it finally comes.
All right. Well,
so people who see the light and say, "I'm sorry, I voted for Trump," don't blame them. It's the ones who say, "No, I still want it."
I guess. Yeah,
this is exactly what I wanted. This is what I voted for. Thank goodness it's here.
I will say this: so many other things are happening now. You'll drive yourself absolutely insane if you put time into blaming people who voted for Trump and publicly say they're sorry they did it now. They deserve some opprobrium, but you got other problems going on. Just for your own mental health. I suggest you back away.
Was it Jeremy Freiberg who suggested that Trump has a MO when things go sour of causing a problem and then fixing it and saying only I can fix it, you see? by reversing himself, and somehow or other he's the genius that fixed everything.
Yeah. Yeah, he
But
did
he's got
mention that.
another MO too, which is, of course, to if it's good, it's me, and if it's bad, it's obviously somebody else's fault. And one of the people that he wanted to blame for anything not working perfectly according to his uh, fantasy
Mm.
was Jerome Powell, J. Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, the chair.
Okay. Yeah.
And he wanted to fire him. It turns out he can't. It's against the law.
Well,
He's
as it turns out,
following the
that's
law.
most
He
of what
didn't
he
fire
did.
them. But the reason isn't because it's against the law. The reason is because the market said that's a terrible idea and they tanked.
That's the law he's worried about.
And so he said, okay, I'm not firing him. I could. I can get rid of him anytime I want to, but I'm not going to. But I think he should lower interest rates, which if he did would cause even more inflation. And that's the biggest drop
Hmm.
in Trump approval, even more than tariffs, according to the polls.
I
So
see.
Jay Powell is here.
Hey, come on in.
And the reaction from Wall Street is making Trump move on this tariff thing because the real world, in fact, does catch up. Political gravity is real, so is the market.
Mm-hmm.
And he's trying to fight market forces. It doesn't work like that. It'll be his undoing. It is already the beginning of his undoing, and we're seeing it. So futures are sort of neutral right now. We'll see what happens when the market actually opens. I mean, it's open, but only actual
Yeah.
traders get to see what's going on. The market news is always delayed for a few minutes for regular people like me, so that you don't,
It takes 45
screw with
days
the
to get
market.
here.
But this
Yeah.
is from the Washington
All
Post
right.
talking about Trump screwing up the economy and the increasingly rocky economic picture. See, all of these media sites are defying Trump by saying the economy isn't really that good. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent signaled that there soon be a de-escalation in the huge and growing trade war with China, but as I said, that's not really what he said. In any case,
Hmm.
meanwhile, Trump himself said he had no intention of trying to fire Federal Reserve Chair Jerome H. Powell. That's only after
What?
he said, I intend to fire Jerome H. Powell. It's
Well, I don't have
amazing
it
how they
anymore.
sanitize him.
Yeah.
Amid
As
worries that
it,
could throw gasoline on the fire, Trump said this after a top aide had signaled just days earlier the idea was being studied. A big part of the effort to soften the line is
strongly.
undoubtedly the sour reactions to the tariffs on Wall Street, but it shouldn't escape notice that the ugliness on Wall Street has increasingly seeped into perceptions on
Hmm.
Main Street. Put plainly, Trump's polling on the economy keeps deteriorating.
Yeah.
The big one this week was Gallup. We talked about this, that showed for the first time in a quarter century, a majority of Americans said their personal financial situation was getting worse. And that includes 28% of Republicans. You can't hide that by Fox News won't talk about it.
Hmm.
People understand their own circumstances. You know,
Yes.
the old line about a recession is when your neighbor's out of work and a depression is when you're out of work. You can't hide
Ah,
that with sweet talk.
right. True. Imagine how Christy Nome feels. She just took a $3,000 hit
Well,
to her bottom
that's
line.
just the one we know about. We don't know how many other
Right.
persons were stolen.
That's true. Hmm. Yeah, we have a bias
Right. Just
there.
to underscore, the overall number is higher than it was during three recessions and during the persistent post-pandemic inflation of the past few years. The higher number of personal financial situation being bad. That number is higher than it was during three recessions and during the post-pandemic inflation. As troubling for the administration, the poll suggests it isn't just about stocks. The administration and its allies have occasionally argued stock market isn't really the economy, but since last year, those who don't own stocks have soured slightly more, 8 points toward getting worse, than those who do own stocks, 5 points
Hmm.
getting worse.
That's interesting. You'd think they'd be, well, okay.
Right? So a big question of all of this is how much Americans actually blame Trump? The answer is quite a bit.
All right.
Trump overall numbers on the economy continue to sink to new lows. Two Reuters Ipsos polls this month have shown Trump's approval on the economy 37%, lowest ever, including first term. So when you're going low and how bad Trump is, you have to compare it to his first term because no other president compares. So, he's unique. Nobody's ever
No.
seen anything like it except for me.
Well, that
Similarly,
always
a
happens.
Q poll showed that at Quinnipiac that Americans disapproved of him on the economy by 15 points, 55-40. That's his most negative split ever. Economist YouGov released Wednesday showed Trump underwater by double digits on jobs in the economy for the first time, 53-41. And there are even worse numbers if you dig in. Americans said 72 to 22 that his tariffs would hurt the economy, Reuters and The Economist showed Americans disapproved of Trump by 20 or more points on inflation. 21% of Republicans disapprove of Trump's handling of inflation in The Economist poll. And that same poll showed Americans said by about 30 points that Trump's economic actions have hurt them rather than helped. About 4 times as many say Trump's actions have hurt them and the overall economy a lot, as say they've helped a lot. If you're searching for a silver lining for Trump, it's at 41% of people who think his tariffs will eventually help over the long term. Wait till next month. Okay, even those people are outnumbered by double digits. Americans overwhelmingly think what's happening is quite bad, and it's clear the political middle has deserted Trump on the issue, none of which is a recipe for a real long-term fight. He's going to lose on this. He's already losing on this. He's already lost on this.
Hurry up. More losing.
People need to integrate that into their thinking.
Well, we were tired of the winning.
Don't be afraid of him. Don't, fall back on this. Yes, it's the number one issue. Yes, we're going to talk about it. No, we're not going to stop talking about it. Abrego Garcia is still a political loser for Trump, and it's moving into this territory. It just takes time.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I was going to say,
well,
we're willing
Garcia
to be patient,
issue
but we're not.
Has the extra added benefit of being the right thing to do, which is always cool in politics.
Sure. Well, yeah.
Well, you shouldn't talk about it, but it's the right thing to do. Yes, but the polls say, well, screw the polls. It's the right thing to do.
And the polls aren't even saying that.
Oh, my gosh. It turns out people really like it when a party stands for something.
Yeah.
That's why AOC and Bernie are getting all these big crowds. Not because they're going to be the next president. They're not.
But they're delivering an important message that we hope the next president will deliver.
Yes, and they're standing for something.
Sure.
Hello.
You don't have to be president to deliver a message.
Chuck Schumer, looking what's going on here.
Okay.
15% of young people see country on the right track under Trump poll finds Washington Post. That's the new Harvard Youth poll.
Okay. Those are all, and they all have jobs as influencers.
Right.
And they hate everybody else's fake jobs.
All of those numbers lead to people actually retrenching and reassessing and saying, you know what? Maybe Trump isn't all that popular. Maybe we can write about how he's not doing well. It's okay if he yells at us. Nobody cares if Elon Musk says, I'm going to go to your department. Yeah, go whatever. You're out of here anyway soon. It's not the same effect as the first weeks. And this is all important because, of course, we're getting on Trump in 100 days. Everybody's now doing the reevaluation, so you get to see it in print.
All right.
Trump in retreat. Well, in January 20th, it's now April 24th, so 3 months.
Yeah. Okay.
Close to 100 days.
Right.
Trump in retreat.
90.
The laws of political gravity still apply by William Kristol, Andrew Egger, and Jim Swift in The Bulwark. And The Bulwark has turned out to be a very solid news organization, continuing to grow,
hence the
continuing
name.
to hire. They're doing a lot of podcasts. And another interesting thing, which I often unsubscribe to, I happen not to subscribe to it at the moment, but I have in the past, might in the future, is Jonah Goldberg's Dispatch, conservative outlet that just bought SCOTUS Blog.
Oh,
they're trying to go legitimate.
Crying about that, and rightfully, Jonah Goldberg. He's Jonah Goldberg. I don't know if you know this.
Yeah, he's Jonah Goldberg. He's not,
but that's who he is. Yeah. And he's not
he's
great.
Not the other Goldberg who was on the he
doesn't need more money from
the Signal chat.
Right.
But and he is Jonah Goldberg, but he is a never Trumper too, so I could tolerate him.
Okay. I don't know about subscribing.
He's not as annoying as David Brooks or Ross Douthat. Both of them have deserted Trump and are demanding revolution in their columns.
Yeah, that's true.
Because he's
David
betrayed
Brooks
conservatism.
now ready to do that. Yeah, that is pretty interesting. Considering that what used to concern him.
But the Bulwark is pretty solid without being obnoxious.
Okay.
They don't have the John Uliot. Trump is wonderful. He never makes a mistake. That's why it's hard to believe that Pete Hegseth is going to last. You don't have to read all this suck-up stuff.
Okay.
With some of these other outlets. And I don't find that at the Dispatch, and I don't find that at the Bulwark. The problem with the Dispatch is I disagree with 90% of their policy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not obnoxious about it. If they want to write about how bad Trump is, plus do SCOTUS blog, which is neutral, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, everybody's worried. Big SCOTUS blog fans are worried that the nature of the
No, they're
coverage
not
will
going to change
change,
it.
and I hope not. Hopefully, they're buying it as an investment, and very frequently, conservative buyers will take something like that on as an investment and say, what I want is the profits from it, and that comes from allowing them to do their thing. I just want to
Exactly.
be the one that owns the profits.
Yeah. So
Hopefully, that
this bulwark
happens.
piece, hard to turn around these days without tripping over an embarrassing story about Pete Hegseth.
Well,
But here's
sure.
one particularly evocative vignette from Politico about his outgoing chief of staff, Joe Casper,
Oh
with a
yeah.
K. At
Okay.
times, Casper's detractors say his leadership seemed almost juvenile. He graphically described his bowel movements to colleagues in one high-level meeting. During the meeting, he turned and he said, "Can I just tell everybody around the table that I just took an enormous crap before coming in here?" Look, if
Why?
we had to read it, so do you. Happy?
Yeah. I saw that one yesterday, and when I was puzzled, I spent about 6 seconds before I was
Yeah,
like, well, what am I doing? But
yeah.
like I'm trying to figure out, well, like what's the move here? Like somewhere he must have learned or been told, no, this is like a huge
Move
power
is in
play.
bowel movement. We already
Yeah.
heard about it. I don't think we need to hear anything else about it.
But yeah, is like it's a power play. It throws your colleagues off and makes it and dismisses their importance and diminishes them and
No,
lets
this is
them
all
know
their
that you hold them in
warrior,
contempt. What?
toxic masculinity stuff.
Yeah,
Anything I
yeah.
do is important, and therefore, shut up.
I guess. Holy
I'm your
mackerel.
boss. You have to listen to
I
me. I'm
don't
going
think
to
that
make
makes
you
any
listen to
sense.
me.
That just makes you sound like a child.
Well, he is a child,
Uh,
but
yeah.
everybody in the administration's a child. Uh, did I
True.
remember to say, by the way, and did I get this right? When Mike Flynn was fired, it was because he was illegally lobbying for Turkey without telling anybody.
That was happening too. Yes, and
Yeah, there was a whole bunch of other stuff about his communications that you accurately
yeah.
pointed out, but I think the reason he was let go is the Turkey
I
stuff.
think that may be right, and I'm finding as the years go on, and I don't know what else is going on in the background, but I'm finding it more and more difficult to find the original sources that will reveal contemporaneous understanding of why he was fired, and I don't know whether that's because that's being revised by experts who understood the situation, or whether it's because Mike Flynn is like paying black hat hackers to change his online history and
Oh,
profile.
probably the latter, I
That's
would
what I'm
guess.
afraid of. But
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Anyway, the meat of the article here, Trump chickened out. Donald Trump is in retreat, and it's a fine sight. Trump told reporters
Not
yesterday
his
the very high
ass.
tariffs on Chinese goods he'd imposed with great fanfare 2 weeks ago
Fanfare.
will
All
soon.
right.
Yeah,
Want
you
to
got
pick
one?
one? Yeah, we can pick one at
A short one?
random. I hope so. This looks short. It's got a long tail to it,
I like that though.
like international shipping.
Came down substantially, these tariffs. The hashtag Trump chickened out went viral on China's internet with more
Hmm.
than
Did
150
it?
million views on the social media platform Weibo. Trump also said yesterday he had no
I forgot
intention
about
of firing
Weibo,
Federal Reserve Jerome Powell.
but he did.
Jay Powell. This newfound state of satisfaction came after weeks of nonstop criticism. Just the day before, Trump had called Powell a major loser. Last Thursday, Trump had said Powell's termination cannot come fast enough. Again, he's got to blame somebody for something.
Can't come fast enough, but it wasn't me. I'm not planning on firing
He
him.
doesn't understand or care about inflation.
Major
He just
loser.
wants rates to come down.
Oh, okay.
And he's mad
Yeah.
that Jerome Powell won't lower rates.
Right.
Well, when inflation is about to go up because of scarcity, you don't lower rates. That just makes hyperinflation.
Yeah, we've been
And
through
that's
that a couple
bad.
of times, and Democratic presidents have expressed similar frustrations, but then they're stuck with, look, the economists say
Yeah,
this is
this is
actually
what you have to
bad
do.
for inflation.
Right. The markets hadn't liked the high tariffs or the threats against Powell. Sure enough, they rallied for now in response to Trump's U-turns. And speaking of markets, this is Bill Crystal, note
Oh,
that with Tesla's stock price plummeting, like down 71%, Elon Musk tried to reassure investors by saying his time allocation to Doge will drop significantly starting next month. So it was a day of Trumpist retreat, and it was a useful reminder that Trump is not immune from pressure. The markets are the strongest form of pressure on Trump, as Jonathan Last argued the other day, but we've seen plenty of cases over the years of Trump backing off under political pressure, too. Remember when he was pro-life, or when he briefly backed background checks for gun purchases,
Hmm.
or when he reluctantly agreed to leave troops in Syria, or when public uproar led to halting the policy of separating migrant children? On the one hand, it would be a mistake to make too much of this. Trump's commitment to autocracy is solid, but whatever tactical U-turns he pulls off, the fundamental danger of Trump and Trumpism remains. Still, if Trump can be induced to occasionally interrupt his program of destruction, that's a
Hmm.
good thing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you can engineer it,
So
do it.
you might ask, you might say,
Me?
isn't it desperately important that Trump be weakened politically as quickly as possible? The answer is yes. Only a decline in Trump's popularity can loosen the attachment of some Republican members of Congress
Hmm.
and also judges who, I don't want to shock you, are also aware of popularity ratings, non-political figures though they are. So if Trump's reversals help him politically, like it helped the stock market, isn't that a problem? Well, somewhat, but the good news is that political U-turns in general don't usually help much. People are blaming Trump for the tariffs, and the fact that he said, "Well, I'll soften a little on China," and the market responded. Don't That doesn't make people all of a sudden say tariffs are good or now I like Trump on the economy. That's not how it works.
Hmm.
We saw that painfully with Biden. It's going to be true with Trump as well. Slide is real, and then they go over the same polls we did. So one might also note that the market's forced to change. What lesson can politicians, especially Democrats, learn from this? Be tough. Send a clear message.
All right.
That message should not be, okay, I'm going to approve Trump's appointments,
Right.
by the
Yeah,
way.
I don't know why that is still happening.
The people who tend to do that, like Dick Durbin, are starting to retire, which
That's
is good.
true. He did. He started to retire yesterday.
He started to retire about 10 years ago.
Yeah, right. Well, I guess if you're talking about starting to retire, he gave people cause to want him to retire some year ago, and yesterday was the day in which at which he said, "Oh, I will do that now."
Yeah, now it's our job to retire Susan Collins and a bunch of other Republicans. When people
Okay.
feel uncertain, they'd rather have somebody strong and wrong than weak and right. Bill Clinton said way back in 2002,
Hmm.
could we be entering a period where the public sees that Trump is both wrong and weak? He's going to just like take it on the chin on these tariffs. China's going to eat his lunch.
All right.
He's not tough
With
enough for Putin.
chopsticks.
Everybody knows that. He's not tough enough for Xi, who's even tougher than Putin.
Hmm.
So, it's all there. And so I have this article, which I'll just mention in passing because I'm pretty much done, from Foreign Policy last week. The
Okay.
awful history of tariffs and depressions, what the 19th century teaches us about what happens next. It
I
is
knew there was
rare that
history.
we can watch the unfolding of a global economic downturn with such precision as we can today. And this is at the time that the 145% U.S. tariff in China was threatened and 125% retaliatory
Yeah.
levy by Beijing. The world's
Right.
largest bilateral trading relationship is effectively frozen. We've not even begun to see the consequences. Other countries have got 90-day reprieve. How quickly things can spiral down became clear after Trump announced steep new tariffs on April 2nd. Trillions of dollars were wiped off the financial markets. U.S. economic history has a lot to say about how trade wars can set off something much, much worse. Since the beginning of the 19th century, the U.S. has suffered 6 economic depressions, which I define as 6 or more quarters of sustained economic contraction. Although there's no standard definition, all but one were either directly caused or significantly worsened by tariffs and trade embargoes. As a historian who studies international trade, global commodities, and financial panics, I can assure you Trump's tariff policies will be devastating unless somebody manages to stand up to him and make it stop. But as we talked about, it's already too late.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to talk about powerful forces in economic life, comparative advantage, the benefit provided by international trade that allows a country to specialize based on
Sure.
its advantages in growing wheat, weaving cloth, coding software, whatever they do well.
Canned ham.
By trading these goods internationally, each country can allocate scarce resources to the things that its farmers, miners, manufacturers can most cheaply produce.
Yeah.
In
They can
theory,
produce produce.
everybody benefits from international trade, and the theory works. And of course, a large country could put a thumb on the scale. And as a former British colony, the U.S. has always been particularly vulnerable to tariff wars. For centuries, Britain molded
That's
its
going
colonies'
back
trade to
ways.
the motherland's purpose. New York, Maryland, and South Carolina were expected to provide flour and rice for the slave-powered tobacco and sugar plantations in Virginia. Britain prohibited the colonies from manufacturing their own textiles, iron, and paper. The increasing limitations Britain imposed finally led to the American Revolution. From its start, the Articles of Confederation and then the Constitution sought to limit executive action that would sharply or rapidly change international trade. That's where Congress comes in. When you violate the Constitution, the Supreme Court can say you're wrong,
So,
but only Congress can impeach.
oh, all right, and they can't even do that.
Well, our Congress can't. A Congress certainly can.
Yeah, okay.
The Panic of 1819
1819.
happened. U.S. farmers
20.
lost the Caribbean markets they had dominated for more than a century because Britain was blocking ships. By
Right.
December 1818, U.S. wheat prices dropped 50%. Farmers could no longer pay the mortgages owed to the U.S. Land Office. Debts to country stores went unpaid. Country stores' debts to furnishing merchants in U.S. cities went unpaid.
They
The
became
Panic of
dollar
1819 began, and the trade restrictions continued to distort markets. New York rescued itself by smuggling wheat across the Great Lakes to Canada. Toronto and Montreal
From Canada.
turned it into bonded British flour for sale in the Caribbean. And Virginia, within a decade, the Anglo-American trade war had made the cost of feeding Caribbean plantations so high that slaveholders there pressed the mother country to abolish slavery, but not before reimbursing them for their slaves.
That's true. Interesting, to say the least.
International trade restrictions first passed in 1817 stifled U.S. grain exports, which enriched cotton production and with it slavery in the U.S. South. So there's a lot of history entwined with tariffs. None of it good.
Okay. So yeah, I think I misunderstood a piece of that, but as you were you saying, it doesn't, never mind, it's a detail. But yeah, the wheat to sales as between us and Canada, were we exporting wheat that we couldn't send to the Caribbean to Canada?
Yeah, so they could make it into
versus
stuff.
smuggling it
Call
in
it
from
British,
Canada,
and
like
then the
we
U.S.
need
was
wheat.
allowed to buy it.
Okay, all right. I mean, look, this is well, it's certainly more than you need to know to understand the history of tariffs being bad. But it's nice to to go beyond.
Well, when they get bad enough, people start finding ways
first
around
lesson.
it, then smugglers come in.
Right, and sometimes those ways are shooting people, so be careful.
That's another way.
Yeah.
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 So look, people,
It's
when they
easier
get
to just have a
unhappy
nice
about
economy.
taking their economic livelihood away, start reacting in various and sundry ways.
Right.
One way is having your popularity drop in the polls.
True.
And when then people say, yeah, but it could get worse, this is what they mean about getting worse.
Yeah. Then you throw tea off the boats. And
Smuggling,
it's unbelievable.
lawlessness,
Holy
all
cow.
sorts of stuff like that.
Yeah. People remember some of that. If you don't remember anything at all except for, the most basic stuff from American history. I remember stuff about the Revolution. I don't know. Give me Stamp Act. You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a tariff. This, wasn't the Stamp Act wasn't like everybody walk around and stamp your feet or let's all go buy postage stamps. And why is that bad? Yeah, tariff on goods coming in. Had to have a stamp. You had to buy the stamp in order to bring the thing. That was just a tariff. Oh, we hated that. Oh, yeah. Then, right. Something, tea overboard. I don't know. And Sarah Palin thinks Paul Revere was ringing bells warning the British. This is a bad idea. Bad economic idea. No, that wasn't. It had progressed beyond that at that point. But Republicans are sometimes slow in the uptake, understanding the news cycle. Okay. Sarah Palin was in the news just again the other day. And
by losing?
Yes. Well, always. But this time losing in court again for the 55th time. I think this has got to be driving her crazy. Donald Trump is suing every media organization for being unfair to me. And they're paying him millions of dollars. And she's back in court. Maybe now is the time I can cash in on this. And everybody's like, Sarah Palin, what are you kidding me? The juries are just perfectly happy to say, yeah, no, there's no theory under which media companies owe you money for being unfair to you. But Donald Trump is getting it. Yeah. What do you want me to do?
Okay. Well,
so
a couple of lightning round things here before I go.
Yeah.
New Pew poll out. Pew, pew, pew. Trump's approval, disapproval with Hispanics in the new Pew poll, 2772. Sharp drop off from his 2024 performance.
What about in the Rio Grande Valley?
Those who don't watch the news
Hmm.
thought he was great. Reality's hitting now
All
because
right. Yeah.
those prices are going up. That's one of the things I
Yeah.
wanted to
That
mention.
and where are all my neighbors?
Yeah. So yeah, back in March it was 48.47. Now it's 32.65.
Okay.
And the same person,
What?
the same person who on social media said, "Ah, you're going to believe a Fox News poll,"
Hmm.
said, "Oh yeah, it's Pew."
Oh. This is maybe just a
They really
bot
have
that
trouble,
hates polls.
grasping reality here.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's an easy throwaway. It makes you sound like you know something about the pollsters, and certain people who don't are inclined to believe that. Oh, yeah, maybe the pollster's biased. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
maybe that's it.
maybe that's it.
Yeah,
All
right.
right, and here's a better one.
Let there be light. Oh,
Svdate
it's God.
writes.
Please, come on. That guy is a jerk.
Svdate repeats a Donald Trump Truth Social post
Huh.
and says, "Before I
Don't
tell
do
you what he
this.
said, not a word, not even a syllable of this is true. Complete and
Okay.
total lie." Trump tweets an hour ago, "Gas and grocery prices are way
Ah.
down, just like I said they would be. Eggs are plentiful, and they're down 87%.
Hmm.
Nice."
Yeah.
None
Great.
of that's true.
Nice. Yeah, he does that fairly frequently. I do get
And
sometimes
it
frustrated
doesn't
with
work
seeing it
because people actually then
reproduced.
go to the store and try to buy eggs, and then they have to fill up their cars.
Yeah. Oh, you can't do both on the same day. There's no way
Well,
you can
even
afford
if you
it.
did both the same day, you can go to Costco and do both.
I guess so.
They
But then
sell
you have to
gas
buy
and they
100
sell
eggs.
eggs.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to buy 100 eggs, but you
But
can
that's a
do
good
it.
idea. Eggs are in short. Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, that's just his wishful thinking. That brings us to like his weird proclivities about the power of positive thinking, which I still mean to profile one day. But yeah, it's a real sickness with him, and he loves to do this. And fans, I guess, hey, ask the guy on Twitter who hates Pew and Fox. Do you believe what Trump just said? But he might.
You might. You never know.
It's sad. All right. Well, that is funny. And a good way to go out. And I guess. Oh, and then I can I can get ready for your fanfare of
You got my
your.
backwards fanfare ready. It's time.
There's the backwards Skype thing.
I didn't
Okay.
hear it.
But, oh, you didn't hear
Here
it?
it is.
Oh.
No.
Okay. Well, you heard that music. Okay. Maybe I'll.
That I hear.
Okay. You know what? It was played off of desktop and maybe not through soundboard, and that's why I didn't hear it. Well, anyway, it's quite
Well,
annoying.
it's good to understand
backwards.
why it didn't work, but it did.
Yes, right. But it's important to realize why it didn't work and why
Oh,
tariffs
David
don't
Jolly
work.
joins the Democratic Party and is thinking about running for governor of Florida.
Oh, no. That has not historically been great. But okay, good news. Break. We'll see you next week. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. And so now my question is, did anybody hear the reverse ringtone from Skype? I mean, it came through on my headphones, but I was playing it off the desktop. I thought that would be an easy way to store it. I need more soundboard pages. But yeah, we reversed the Skype ringtone, and it's annoying. And I don't know but if you didn't hear it, you kind of... Right, you see how this works and how annoying it is? But all right, well, one of our worst running jokes, I would say. But okay, always fun to experiment with it, and it's always fun to know that upstairs in the edit suite, anytime you get to mention, we should try something either backwards or turned up, turned down. We have a very willing crew up there. And all right, I'm glad that they take the initiative and jump in. We're just kidding along the way. It would be nice to hear this in reverse. Okay, but somebody else should do the work. Well, they're doing the work. And this time Greg heard it. He was still listening to the stream. So yeah, I just dropped it into a soundboard slot instead. And that's plugged in and programmed and ready to go out. Although, again, also, I mean, I thought every desktop thing might have been programmed to go out over the stream, but not necessarily out through what are we using now? Zoom? Okay. Well, at any rate, you've heard it, and you probably don't need to hear it more than that because it's kind of annoying sounding. All right. So let's see. Oh, and another all the links coming through in the permanent chat. Thanks very much, Greg. And now time for us to jump into Pocket and start making decisions about whether we're going to do the latest, hottest news or continue to examine things that we made notes about along the way. It'll be a little bit of both because, one, you're going to have to do a lot of scrolling to find these old ones. But I mentioned somewhere along the way, we'll try and find this first one here. But we made mention of both Greg making mention of toxic masculinity as a topic in general, but also the idea of this fake job stuff and how we mentioned, you were saying 15% of young people surveyed are still sort of into the Trump thing, and I offhandedly said, but they're all conservative influencers who are getting paid to have a financial stake in perpetuating the Trump mythos, I guess. And Greg had mentioned, it's the toxic masculinity stuff that it's at work as well, with Trump refusing to back down about things. But there was somewhere, let me see if I can't, I don't know whether it has got a photo illustrating it that would be easily recognized, but I think it's not coming up all that easily. But Scott shared this one with me too, and it was it might be like going on 2 weeks ago here. So, I'm going to keep trying to find it, but it was real interesting just in terms, we've, kind of broken that ground before in talking about, toxic masculinity in terms of the conservative influencers and what they're telling the teenage boys and 20-something guys these days on their websites and on their YouTube channels and all of this stuff. But there was something very specific, and gosh, it's really hard to keep up. But I might find it easier to now look through Scott's messages to me to see if I can find it again. It's really, honestly, the fire hose has got us buried here. I'm going to have to look this way instead, because I really did want to try and share this thing with you. And there was this really bizarre connection in the headline. And, let me see if I can go and find this thing. I'm sorry that this is taking so long already, but I really thought it would be a good way to follow up. Now I got to scroll a little ways back. There it is. I'll just have to read it from the phone at this point, I guess. If I can't come up with there's the photo illustrating it. Does that stand out in any way? Not so far. Anyway, this piece from Vox. There it is. Okay, thanks. You just sent it again. Just as I found it. So thank you very much, Scott, listening and responding. We have a very responsive crew here. There it is. And I finally found it in my... okay, there it is. So it's a Vox piece, The Strange Link, and it is strange, between Trump's tariffs and incel ideology. And I was instantly intrigued by that headline, like, what? It's sad that there could even be such a link established, that it would be obvious enough to actually write an article about, because it doesn't immediately spring to mind. What the effing F could that be, you might say to yourself. And for that, we'll ask Constance Grady, who wrote this piece for Fox, to explain this, the strange link between Trump's tariffs and incel ideology. Meet the lonely men, yuck, who think tariffs will get them girlfriends. How? That can't be true, right? Like at the minimum, that's going to raise the price of mail order brides, is it not? I don't know, but not if they're coming from Russia. Okay, is that it? No, that still is not exactly it. I can't believe we're going to have to do this. All right, let's see. Get this pop-up out of my face, please. Thank you very much. Will that get the story out of my face too? It looks like it will. That is surprising. Let's see whether the phone version. Tariffs or this, mused an X, that is to say Twitter, user on April 5th. Tariffs or what? What are you talking about? This is we won't tell you yet, but we'll tell you that this happened on the day after President Donald Trump's newly announced tariffs. Remember, he called it Liberation Day. The Dow Jones spinning into its biggest drop since the height of the pandemic. So that's what's going on here. Whoops, we don't need to download any apps in this. All right, why is this now makes it that much more difficult to try to open this thing up? All right, Vox making things difficult for us, but MSN displaying it. This in question, remember this X user saying tariffs or this. The this in question was a TikTok video from last summer. All right, before I even tell you what this is about, in the TikTok video, tariffs or this, like it's already a nonsensical question. What do you mean? Should we impose an international regime of additional surtaxes on imports from around the world and thereby impacting global trade? Or what? Or watch a TikTok video? How is that an equivalence? Well, it's not. But in the minds of idiots and simpletons across the country, it is somehow. Why? Because I've said so on Twitter. And all right, now we have to pay attention to this. So, tariffs or this. The this in question was a TikTok video from last summer in which the all-women executive team of an Australian skincare company, I know, like, what? Playfully sang and danced around their office. And I guess so what he's trying to say, he's posing here is, should we have a regime of tariffs or should we have this? Not a TikTok video, not charging people money or watching social media, but rather the subject of the TikTok video. What is that? Should we have tariffs or should we have all woman companies from Australia? What do you mean or? We don't have any control over what happens in Australia, where they're dancing and singing in their office. Why is that even a thing? What are you talking about? Why would you pay any attention to that? And the answer is we have no real worldview. We don't have girlfriends. And somehow something, blah, blah, blah. Basically, the fact that there's anybody out there saying, I don't have a girlfriend, and that's something the government should help me with. What? I don't know what you're talking about. What is your problem? Anyway, that's what's going on. He's angry because faced with the option of a woman joking about being a Gen Z boss and probable economic ruin, tariffs, the ex-user concluded. In other words, should we jeopardize global trade and destroy the supply chain and live with shortage and want and hyperinflation? Or should we, but if we do, then we'll be able to destroy the circumstances under which women can dance and sing on TikTok briefly from their office? That does not even follow. But I guess that's what's going on in the so-called minds of people who have had their brains poisoned by the toxic masculinity influencers. The apparent link, and it is not apparent, but to this person it is apparent, not just the writer, but to the teenage posters in general, the apparent link between a group of Australian women having fun at their office and the historic economic fallout of Trump's tariffs in the U.S. may be obscure to a lot of people. I hope so. But for a vocal contingent of incel-adjacent men on X, and why are we paying attention to them? I don't know, but they sometimes go around perpetrating mass shootings or beating people up at PTA meetings. So I guess we have to pay attention. Well, for a vocal contingent of incel-adjacent men on X, the link is self-evident. And, this is a continuing problem of the male influencer Curtis Yarvin era now. Of course it's self-evident. Anyone can see it. No, you're a street corner lunatic. There's not a thing here. You're completely wrong. Everybody thinks you're crazy. A lot of men, specifically single and frustrated ones on the right, who have a negative view of women because they have negative women involved in their lives, have a perplexingly reverse SJW attitude, reverse social justice warrior attitude. That would probably be anti-social justice warrior attitude toward women in the workplace. Explained Substack writer, and we only know the Substack writer by their online identity, which I guess is the name of the Substack as well, called Cartoons Hate Her. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, and it only makes it more perplexing and confusing that we are having to refer to our expert here. The person we're looking to for explanation is known only to us as the Substack writer Cartoons Hate Her, and it's very difficult to follow. I'm sure more difficult to follow having me read it to you than having it on a screen in front of your face, and you can see that it's linked. And, okay, I get it. That's the name of the Substack and the Substack writer. So, okay, what does Cartoons Hate Her say? A lot of men, specifically single and frustrated ones on the right who have negative view of women, have a perplexingly reverse SJW attitude toward women in the workplace. This was a March post on Cartoons Hate Her in the midst of the dodgy shutdowns. So what does that have to do with anything? They believe women are part of an oppressor class. Wow. I mean, not only is that historically upside down and backwards, but, why would they ever believe such a thing? And the answer is, I want a girlfriend. I want a relationship, or I want to beat her and chain her up in the basement. Whatever it is, I want sex from women, and I'm not getting that. It's being withheld from me. Now, it's being withheld from me because I'm a pimply-faced weirdo. I dress funny. And I live in my mom's basement. And I think from the internet that what women really want is for me to be insulting to them and treat them poorly. Because I read that was called negging, and it's supposed to get them hot. Well, it doesn't. Don't do it. Anyway, I mean, they're not listening to my program. But hey, kids, please. But that's essentially what's happening. Women don't like you because you're a physical and intellectual turnoff. That's not going to get you anything. It's not going to work. Even dumb women know they don't like being insulted. So it's certainly not by pimply-faced weirdos. But what if I'm a pimply-faced weirdo who takes a lot of steroids and I lift weights and I'm totally jacked? Well, that might grab their eye. But then if they speak to you, they're not going to want anything to do with you. But they're essentially, okay, this is what. So why are they an oppressor class? Because they can withhold the sex from me. They can withhold anything, I guess, from me. The thing I'm interested in is what they're withholding from me. Therefore, they are oppressing me. They demand that I meet certain criteria. I think those criteria are lifting weights, but as it turns out, that criteria is being nice and helpful to me. Oh, well, okay. But, so if lifting weights and punching them isn't working, what am I supposed to do? Andrew Tate told me that works, and he's got lots of chicks. And look, a Lamborghini. I don't understand. Where's my stuff? So now they think women are an oppressor class. So they believe women are part of an oppressor class who has, for some reason, been granted unfair degrees of privilege in the form of being hired for fun, pretend jobs. Now we veered off of the sex thing, but they're also oppressors because they get easy jobs. Why do they get easy? I don't know why they get easy jobs. Maybe somebody else has figured out, in their view. Oh, well, somebody else has figured out a way to, if I award women fun, easy jobs, then they'll give me the sex. But that doesn't really appear to be it either. And your thinking is so warped over how can I get the sex from people that it never occurs to you that there's no economic component of this. You're completely off base. It just doesn't make sense. But here they've put this idea together in their heads that one of the other reasons they're oppressors, women are oppressors, because they have unfair degrees of privilege in the form of being hired for fun, pretend jobs. Don't look for logic. This is just the thing that they say to one another. And if you put it on Reddit and someone else reads it, that is now a theory. Okay. In this reading, the Australian skincare executives are callously celebrating that oppressive privilege by filming themselves dancing. How dare you? I mean, can you imagine being moved to these levels of anger over something like that? They're having fun. I can't believe it. Here I am just trying to sit here and browse the internet and watch stuff for entertainment, which, you know, that's no privilege at all, right? And they're producing content. Rawr. What? Well, kids, you're very dumb. In this worldview, the fun pretend jobs, and here's where I wanted to bring this because it connects to the idea of people thinking everybody else is working in fake jobs. Never mind that I'm discovering the fake job network out there by sitting and watching YouTube videos over and over again. Like, why do you exist? How is it you have food? Why haven't you died of starvation? If nothing else, it's obviously part of the same privilege that you think you're targeting by saying, these women are making videos at work. Yeah, at work. They're at least at work. You're not. What are you talking? Well, I don't know. I don't know either. In this worldview, the fun pretend jobs include, now we're starting to get to the connection, federally funded government jobs. So that's why they're so interested in the dodgy, and why, as it turns out, dodgy work needs to be done by 20-somethings, not just because they're impressionable and Elon Musk tells them to do something and they're like, he's rich, so he must be smart, and they jump. They may also believe, I'm firing these dumb fake women who tease me with their videos. That's what they're doing at the Department of Health and Human Services all day long. No. I mean, remember, the fact that people are dancing in an Australian skincare company, one, means nothing, and two, doesn't tell you anything about what's going on at the Department of Health and Human Services, and three, is not generally applicable to women globally either. But I saw it on YouTube, so it's a real thing. So this is what's going on. In this worldview, the fun pretend jobs include federally funded government jobs. These men further believe that because DEI initiatives mandate that women get these fun pretend jobs, usually described, this is the parlance that they use, as email jobs. I don't know why exactly, but that's their terminology. Women have achieved unnatural degrees of self-sufficiency. It finally does end up landing someplace where previous generations of male toxicity influencers have been laying the groundwork. Women are able to work and have independent lives outside of the home and without dependence on men. And so therefore, we can no longer leverage, if you want to eat, you have to give me the sex, into a working relationship. That's the root of the problem with these guys. This new generation, I mean, I don't know why they don't just go straight there. But that's too paleo-conservative for them. And then they don't get to watch YouTube videos of women dancing, which ultimately that's what they want to watch in their lives. So, but how can I turn this into an important thing instead of me being a time waster? No, I'm developing a worldview and sharing it with others and red pilling them. Okay, now you're important. But yeah, so it's their view of, well, why do I hate DEI? I can't define DEI, but I can tell you why I hate it. And the reason is because it gives women fake jobs so they can, and they're so fake that they have time to dance in a TikTok video, which lasts 30 seconds, which, okay, how long does it take to make that video then? Not that long. But that's where they are. They believe that DEI initiatives are bad. They're bad because they enable women. Not only do they enable women to get these jobs, they mandate that women be given these jobs by the federal government. You know, the big federal government program that places people in privately owned Australian skincare companies. No, it doesn't have to make any logical sense. And remember, it's all being driven by the quest for the sex, so there's probably not much real thinking going on. I don't know. Women, yar! I'm so angry. That's all there really is to it. So with the so many women getting mandated to get these fake email jobs, and I'm not certain whether it's because all they do is email or it's remote work, so they do their job by email, or they're fake. I don't know why the terminology is email jobs, but With these jobs, women have achieved unnatural degrees of self-sufficiency. No longer do they have to rely on marrying a good provider for economic stability. Unless, of course, you're trying to get rid of the marriage tax, in which case something, or the marriage penalty, or I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Actually, that doesn't even work. But no longer do they have to rely on marrying a good provider for economic stability. And by the way, they could choose to marry a good provider who's another woman, but that doesn't enter into their thinking. With that impetus gone, women's standards for romantic partners have skyrocketed, leaving these hapless men unable to find a girlfriend. There's got to be, where's my, I'm on the wrong page of my, there we are, the trombone thing. It's really complex and stupid, but there you have it. Essentially, it's inflation for boyfriends, I guess, right? With the impetus for getting a provider locked down, women's standards for romantic partners have skyrocketed. Now, that's interesting, too, because that just feeds them into thinking, I need to take steroids and lift weights. That's what we mean by skyrocketed. No, it just means that they can, they have better options available to them. I want a nice person who also looks good. Now, that may be difficult to find, but, in years past, kids have thought, well, playing guitar will get me the sex I'm looking for if I think I'm an ugly dude or something like that. Or lifting weights or being physically fit. Yes, okay. I mean, these are things that might make you attractive to the eye, but in order to actually stay with you, they're going to want to see some more. Unless, of course, we go back to the times when you could hit them over the head with a club, drag them by their hair to the cave, and tie them up there. And isn't that intriguing? And isn't it maybe even a little easier than lifting weights? Cartoons Hate Her, the Substack writer, quotes an ex-user who berated her for arguing that single women can be happy living by themselves. Isn't that something? So, okay, it is anecdotal evidence, but okay. So an ex-user berated her for arguing that single women can be happy by themselves, saying your happy life alone, in scare quotes, only exists because the state, what? You're already wrong, right? Because the state funnels taxpayer money into your independence LARP, live action role playing. That's where we are with the boys these days. You can only live happily alone, not just because you're economically self-sufficient, but because the state gives you fake jobs so that you can remain financially independent. No. And then he has a term for it. So this guy is like totally Curtis Yarvin poisoned. He's got a term for it. I call it negative prostitution. Okay, just because you have a terminology for it doesn't mean you're smart, but okay. I call it negative prostitution. Why? Because it takes men's money away through taxes to ensure women don't have sex with them. That's the point of the tax system there, Pat. You nailed it. You really got into it. Thank God you finally dissected it. He cuts through and clarifies, like greed. Greed is good because it cuts through and clarifies. Now we've gotten to the bottom of the system of taxation and why my hero, Donald Trump, wants to replace income taxes with tariffs only, because those don't take money away from men like me. They take money away from China. Only they don't. It takes money away from men like you. Whatever. And also we're not using taxes to give women fake jobs so that they won't have sex with you. You're taking care of that all by yourself. The tax system is totally incidental to that. We're paying for bridges. We're paying for education. And okay, sure, some of those things. Well, women, they use bridges to commute to these fake jobs, which they only get because they got education. And so therefore, all right, you can connect anything, pal. How about brush your teeth? Maybe that will help you. Like meet a girl. I don't know what to tell you. It doesn't work this way. These men read Trump's economic policy as a project of redistributing money and jobs away from those women and back to men, ultimately for men's sexual gain. How long has it been since I told you Trump World was a sex cult? Anyway, Dodgy slashed away the email jobs in the government, they argue, while tariffs will force a recession that will ultimately kill the email jobs of the private sector so that women have to go back to being dependent on men. Meanwhile, tariffs, remember we started on tariffs? Tariffs will bring back manufacturing jobs, which everyone knows are for manly men. Only men take manufacturing jobs, except for women who do, and Rosie the Riveter and other extremely famous examples. But wow, I mean, come on. Oh, okay. The alarm has gone off, and so now that means I have been kicked out of my article for turning it off. But wow. It's quite disturbing, to say the very least, and we are running out of time. It's time for us to take our 2-minute break. It gives us an opportunity to regroup, find the rest of the article, just so that you know exactly how horrifically poorly served certain young men have been by this whole movement. And guess what? So now that we're talking about, that's the 15% that still say things like, yeah, I'm still with Trump. Are there women among them? Yes, they are the women who, for whatever reason, have decided, I will date these weirdos. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kegrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Yeah, there's a little more. And I've found my way back to where I was in the article through yet another mechanism. But, right. So we had just heard from this latest Curtis Yarvin wannabe that he had the whole theory. Your happy life alone only exists because the state funnels taxpayer money into your independence, LARP. I call it negative prostitution because it takes men's money away to ensure women don't have sex with them. It is, well, I don't know what to tell you. The article goes on and deals with it clearly. I mean, make no mistake, the author is not under the impression in any way, shape, or form that this makes sense. It's just they're saying this anyway. These men, again, read Trump's economic policy as a project of redistributing money and jobs away from women and back to men, ultimately for men's sexual gain, because that's super important. I mean, I guess you could think that this was important to Trump, given that we did spend time the other day figuring out, well, how, for instance, does Lindsay Halligan end up getting in charge of purging wrongthink from the Smithsonian Institution? And the answer is, I put on a suit that made me look good, and I went to Trump's golf club the day he was there, and she didn't say as much, but, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, maybe attributing too much intentionality to her, but essentially dress up, put yourself in a place where you'll catch Trump's eye. That worked. What do you do, sweetheart? I'm a lawyer. You could be my lawyer. I'm sure, like ribbing everybody else. Yeah. Oh, yeah, good one, boss, good one. And then she was his lawyer. And then, I don't really, what do you do? Now that I asked you that day, what do you do? And you said, I'm a lawyer. Now you're my lawyer. What kind of law do you do? What can I make you work on, I guess? For now, I need a lawyer in the defense team. Go walk with these guys to the courthouse. Did anybody who watched the trial ever report Lindsay Halligan making arguments at any point? And that's not the only way to contribute in a trial, in a totally legitimate way, of course. The courtroom advocates are not doing all the work, but I don't know if there was any evidence that Lindsay Halligan was contributing to the defense's scheme at any point. And now, then, that naturally evolved into, well, we'll put you in the administration, honey. And then I don't have anything for you to do because I don't know anything about you or what your skills are, but you look great. And what do you want? Oh, okay. Well, hey, tell you what, and maybe she talks to Susie Wiles about something. I don't know. I need some work to do. Well, I'll tell you what, draft an executive order whereby the president orders you to do something, and then you'll have a job. Okay, I'll do that. Well, why aren't the incels mad about that, by the way? Like, talk about your fake jobs. And obviously, this is one of the women that they are told through MAGA ethos, this is hot. This is the person you want. This is the look you're looking for. These are the droids you're looking for. But she creates a job for herself. I'm sure you'd like to create a job for yourself too, but you don't have the ability to draft an executive order and put it in front of the president. She does, so she gave herself this job. Anyway, Dodgy, of course, slashed away the email jobs in government, except for this one and all of the other ones, and none of these were email jobs anyway. They argue, well, tariffs will force a recession. This is a long walk for some sex, don't you think? Tariffs will force a recession to ultimately kill the email jobs of the private sector. Meanwhile, tariffs will bring manufacturing jobs, which are understood to be the rightful domain of men. And that probably deserves fanfare of some kind. We'll do a... how about this one? Yeah. Sounds like the rightful domain of men, don't you think? Tariffs will bring manufacturing jobs, which are understood to be the rightful domain of men, back to the U.S., which they won't. But anyway, by the time the process ends, and by the way, the time the process of bringing back manufacturing jobs to the U.S. through tariffs would end, if that were even to succeed, we'd be talking about 5, 10, 15 years from now, which I don't even know what happens if these guys still don't get any, girlfriends by that point. But anyway, by the time the process ends, they believe men will be gainfully employed, which is the thing you could do now if you want. And now destitute women will be incentivized to sleep with them. I guess having finally successfully turned negative prostitution into positive prostitution. She doesn't make this point in here, but that's what the guys are getting at. They'll be so poor, they'll have no choice but to sell sex to us in order to eat. Hooray! Hooray for progress. That seems problematic in a number of ways, but what can I tell you? That's what they think will happen, and that will mean that the world will have been restored to its proper order. Yay. To be clear, this worldview it's right here, deeply deluded. Even if you agree, and I mean, why even give them the benefit of the doubt, but even if you agree that it's bad that women have the ability to make their own money and thus don't need to settle for subpar romantic partners, and she does include, parenthetically, personally, I take the radical position that this is good. The economics don't work. While it's true that women make up the majority of office workers, it's not true that they only work pretend email jobs. They also make up the majority of workers in the leisure and hospitality industry, selling on the floor of a retail store, waiting tables, etc. And in education and health services, home health aides, nurses, teachers, etc. I mean, it hardly seems like the sort of information you'd need to impart to an intelligent person, but here we have to do it because we're debunking some very deeply unintelligent thoughts. Finally, perhaps most crucially, even if a tariff-led recession may mean layoffs from office jobs, the tariffs are highly unlikely to bring manufacturing jobs back to America. It's a long stretch. And again, the idea here in the most basic form is if it's too expensive to import manufactured goods from outside of the country, and that would impart this is a real economic theory, it would impart a relative advantage to domestically produced goods. That's true. If the goods can be produced and brought to market such that you don't need to simply charge the same amount as imported goods. And that's kind of where it all falls apart. Not to mention the supply chain macroeconomic problem of what does it take to enter the market? What are the transactions costs and the necessities that you have to pay for and execute before you are just magically in the market of selling domestically produced widgets? Here the reference was back to the old Back to School film the other day, that scene in the business class. Like, all right, well, it would be cheaper to manufacture them here in the United States so that we and sell them if we artificially add 100% to the price of imported goods. Well, one, we're not putting that much on it with the exception of Chinese goods, and we might not even end up doing that. And two, yeah, you got to start thinking, okay, we'll manufacture them here. Yeah? Who will do it? I don't know. Workers who know how to do it inherently, or that we have to train. Oh, yeah. And where will they do it? In a factory. What? Free factories that are just lying around? Feral factories. All you have to do is wrangle them and break a horse, right? We're going to break this factory, this wild factory. They're just roaming like bison used to be in the mid. All you have to do is, get one. Land claims. We're going to have a race. Everybody's just going to race to a factory and to make it theirs. No, they're made. They're built. And by the way, who builds them? The people I just deported. All right. So there's lots of problems with all of this. Oh, and in addition, how do we frame the building? Well, it's imported steel. Dang. But we can make it here in the country, except all we have to do is restart blast furnaces that have been lying vacant and going to pot here in the United States when we closed them years ago, right? And all we need now is a gigantic workforce of people who are going to want to stand next to a blast furnace all day and possibly lose limbs along the way. Yeah, it's a line around the block. Anyway, where were we? Oh, yes, right. Finally, and perhaps most crucially, even if a tariff-led recession may mean layoffs from office jobs, they're highly unlikely to bring manufacturing jobs back to America. They're far more likely instead to raise prices, which is already happening, and make everyone's quality of life worse, unless measured by sex, I guess, coerced sex. What's true is that tariffs are likely to make women's lives disproportionately worse, so they can at least do that. If it's really just I hate women, whether they have sex with me or not, there you might have some success, I guess. The tariffs are expected to raise costs for American families by as much as $3,800 per year, and that burden will be carried most heavily by the people who are already poor, and we hate them anyway. As Lauren Leader noted at MSNBC, women still make less money than men, and the pink tax, what they like to call it, means they also pay more than men do for basic toiletries and other necessities. They're more likely than men to shoulder the financial burden of child rearing. Perhaps as a consequence, women make up the majority of America's poor. And yet, they still won't sleep with those men on X. In the TikTok video that enraged so many of these men, the gimmick is that the executives are participating in a girly TikTok trend within the confines of their office. The original trend began with a group of hot girls chanting rapid one-liners about their appearance as they headed out for a night at the club, their voices taking on the register of children playing a clapping game. Now, this is not a trend that I was aware of, but it's one thing to say, all right, I mean, if you are filming yourself getting ready for going out for the night on your time off, then fine, it's your time off. And what do we even care about that? But then people, I guess, parodied that in office videos. That's basically, I guess, how we got if you were wondering, why did anybody make a video of themselves singing in the office? This is the answer. Apparently, first, women making videos of themselves getting ready for going out at a night, for a night on the club. Boots, I don't know how it goes. I don't know the cadence of it, but the text of it is boots and a slicked back bun. Boots and a slicked back bun. I don't know, but maybe you do. Fine. In the Australian office version, the women are chanting in their business casual attire around an array of cubicles. It's a reference to this trend, I guess. Frequently, they play with refrains that juxtapose their girliness with professionalism, like, Gen Z boss and a mini, chants one. 5'3" and an attitude, says another. And apparently this is enraging to men. It's that very juxtaposition that seemed to strike the angry men of X as so unjust, that they seem to prove the video is more than just a bunch of women in another country having fun in a way that didn't affect American men at all, which is what's happening here. Girls just being silly is okay, explains one of the men that cartoons hate her. Quotes, remember that's the writer and the Substack. Girls just being silly on top of the ruins of bastions of masculinity that they just destroyed, sending millions into despair, is not okay. Well, it wouldn't be, except that's not what's happening. The wreckage of masculinity that this man is describing is the idea, and it's only an idea, that being a professional office worker should be a specifically masculine identity. The 1950s ideal of the man in the gray flannel suit, a man who does serious business to provide for his family, and as such is afforded a certain amount of respect. It is true that this archetype has become a species in decline. It is also true that women are now more likely to work at offices than men are. But that didn't happen because of any vast conspiracy from women to destroy men. There's actually a very clear and well-documented pattern that can happen whenever a profession becomes dominated by one gender or the other. The canonical example here is computer programming. How so? In part because it is so new that it is easy to see the switches happen. From the 1940s through the 1960s, programming, to the extent that they had computers. But yeah, programming was considered women's work. At the time, the physical building of computers, the engineering, the hardware, was considered dangerous and intelligent and masculine. The laborious, sedentary grinding away of computer code, that was considered glorified secretary work, feminine. And it was color-coded. And if you watched in... what's the the film title is escaping me. Hidden Figures, yes, where it might have surprised you to find out that, like, oh my God, we need to be doing advanced calculus to program computers. Well, we'll get a bunch of black women to do that. We can pay them 10 cents on the dollar. Like, what? That doesn't make any sense to us in the modern context, but true. As computing developed, however, it gradually became clear that coding was skilled labor. What publications of the 1950s called a black art, not racial black art, but that called for mathematical flair and a talent for innovation. A job that was no longer considered proper for docile, patient, domesticated women, but wild and unruly genius men. Programming's prestige increased, its pay scale went up, and its workforce turned overwhelmingly masculine. And a few years later, we internetized everything and then capitalized everything. And suddenly, I made an app that will tell you how to boil an egg. And I sold it for $1 billion, is like a real thing. Anyway, we can see the opposite effect when professions starts masculine and becomes feminine, as we saw with human resources. As a culture, we consider jobs more valuable, prestigious, and worthy of financial remuneration when we associate them with men. If we come to associate them with women, the job in question loses prestige and its salaries stagnate. At the same time, men in large numbers will start to leave the now feminized profession, thereby increasing the impression that it is properly women's work. Another way of saying this is that the angry men of X don't hate women who work in offices because they took away the jobs of hardworking men. Men stopped working in offices because women had started working in offices too, and our culture hates women. And yet, we'll do anything to get some of them. All right. Now, office jobs thoroughly feminized, are held to be worthless, pointless, producing nothing of value. The only thing to do, according to this worldview, is to sweep the jobs away and replace them with good, honest factory work and push the women who held them into marriage or sex work, here considered to be equivalents. I mean, they said so outright, right? Giving women jobs in an office is really only negative prostitution. There's positive prostitution, I pay you for sex, and there's negative prostitution, I pay you for not sex. There you go. That's all you need to know in order to get by in the world. Oh my God. What a dismal planet they have in mind. That so many online are celebrating the idea that Trump's agenda will destroy the financial lives of women speaks to how deeply misogynistic the ideology that unites Trump and his supporters can be. Yes, right. By the way, that brings us also to the natalism, pro-natalism movement and the idea that the teenage fantasy game of would you sleep with me if we were the only two people on the planet we had to repopulate the world game is a real theory. The promise of good manufacturing jobs becomes not the promise of a respectable union-protected job that pays well enough for you to raise a family without requiring a college degree, but of a manly job that will somehow force women to sleep with you. Of course, right. I make steel. Bingo. Sex happens. Why? I don't know. I'm not sure. I guess in their theory, they say, well, that's a good, stable job, and you'll be a provider for me because I can't do that work, and that's the only work there is these days, and if I want to eat, I'm going to have to attach myself to a steel worker. Of course, the history of the last couple decades is no, very unstable job. Could close at any moment. But with tariffs, I guess not, because we can't afford to import steel anymore. I don't know. Anyway, that's it. The whole project is to fulfill the incel's dream of federally mandated sex. That's what it comes down to. And that is extremely upsetting to learn. And by the way, there's a link to federally mandated sex. What is this even talking about? The link is to a paper, a portal for abstracts for academic papers. The University of Strathclyde in Glasgow. The Undebatables, Inceldom, Entitlement, and the State-Mandated Girlfriend. Holy cow. There's actually a whole study involved in all that. We can't read it, I don't think, but I'm sure the abstract itself would be just too upsetting to read through. Man, I don't know. That's an awful lot to digest, but there it is. And then, of course, gosh, any number of other things. There's another thing that this reminded me of that we probably didn't get to. And now I think also that something else that Scott had shared with me that I'm now reminded of. But I don't know. The connection was fleeting, to say the least. Was it this? I don't even know. Probably not. Anyway, we might as well shift gears and share something else with you. Wow. Okay. There's the New York Times treatment of the thing. Well, one of the things that we discussed just yesterday. If I can get the computer to respond, apparently it's going to take its time. All right. It's unhappy about processing my request to open Pocket articles, but New York Times has treated the thing we were alluding to yesterday, I guess the latest evolution of Republican legal theory, which brings us straight to the President of the United States saying, and here he is supposed to be sworn to uphold the Constitution and faithfully execute the laws, now espousing the belief that it's just too annoying to give people trials. I just want to put that on the record that he's actually saying that. And it's in the New York Times and everything. Luke Broadwater has done the reporting here. The headline is, Trump says undocumented immigrants shouldn't get trials before deportation. The president claimed that countries were sending their prisoners to the United States and that he needed to bypass the constitutional demands of due process to expel them quickly. If you wondered, is there any kind of thinking, any kind of theory, any or sort of explanation for why we're at a point where people are allowing a guy to be president of the United States when he will say out loud in the Oval Office to reporters things like, we don't need to have trials for people that we don't like. We should just go straight to the punishment phase if I say they are terrorists or something like that. Well, we disagreed vehemently with, but understood, having dissected the comments from Sebastian Gorka and Stephen Miller and others. All right, the play is to say that that immigration is an invasion, that an invasion threatens our national everything, sovereignty and security, and that it terrifies people, and so therefore it's terrorism. And if they actually commit a crime, that makes it that much easier to understand why it would be terrorism, even though no, terrorism is supposed to be different from routine street crime, and we'll expel them as terrorists. Well, the other supplemental theory is the one that Trump's been espousing for some time, that they're emptying their prisons, they're sending us our worst, right? The theory is other countries don't want to pay the cost of incarcerating their criminal convicts. So what they're doing instead is letting their criminals out of prison with the proviso that they instead go and infiltrate the borders of the United States, go live in the United States, cause them problems, lower our costs of incarceration, cause problems to them for some unknown reason. I don't know what the payoff is supposed to be for those countries. But some of them are just, enemies of the United States. They just hate us. And so that's what they're doing. I don't think so, but that's what the president of the United States thinks, and that's problematic. President Trump asserted on Tuesday that undocumented immigrants should not be entitled to trials, insisting that his administration should be able to deport them without appearing before a judge. Not only tort reform, where we can reverse the jury verdict, not only stand your ground laws that short-circuit trials and just solve things at the preliminary hearing stage. Now, not even so much as a preliminary hearing. Too much work for judges. Judging is women's work, maybe. The remarks, which he made in the Oval Office in front of reporters, I mean, that's a really remarkable thing to have to say at all in the second paragraph of a newspaper article about anything. Like, remember, this is a newspaper article by a reporter who was, I think, maybe it does say reporting from the White House. In other words, this is how he got the information. Normally, that goes without saying. Yes, he said it in the Oval Office to reporters. That's how I know it. But this is so shocking. Like, no president should say this, even in private. But he didn't. He said it in public to reporters from the Oval Office. These remarks were Trump's latest broadside against the judiciary, which he has said is inhibiting his deportation powers, which he doesn't unilaterally have. Mr. Trump falsely claimed that countries like Congo, he keeps coming back to Congo. Are people running into Congolese immigrants left and right that you're aware of? I mean, does this resonate at all? And I mean, I guess that's supposed to mean for the ignorant Trump supporters in the whitest of white America, I guess they're like, well, I don't know. Anybody who's black and an immigrant comes from where? I guess the Congo, because that's the middle of Africa. Like, what? What are you even talking about? Congo and Venezuela, but at least people in even the whitest white America, Trump America, are running into Hispanic immigrants, Latin American immigrants, and saying, okay, might be Venezuela. I don't know. Wow. Well, anyway, Mr. Trump falsely claimed that countries like Congo and Venezuela had emptied their prisons into the United States, and that therefore he needed to bypass the constitutional demands of due process to expel the immigrants quickly. I hope we get cooperation from the courts, because we can't have thousands of people that are ready to go out, and you can't have a trial for all these people, Mr. Trump said. It wasn't meant. The system wasn't meant to be this. What? Finish your sentences. It wasn't meant. The system wasn't meant. And I don't think there's anything that says that. We don't think there's anything that says that. No one shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property, but by, due process of law sort of thing. Like, no, we don't think it says that. He claimed that the very bad people he was removing from the country included killers, drug dealers, and the mentally ill. We're getting them out. And a judge can't say, no, you have to have a trial. Yes, that's what they're supposed to say. They have to say that. That is a mandatory thing. They can't say, no, you have to have a trial. The trial is going to take 2 years. By the way, whose trial took 2 years? Who's benefited most from due process in this country and getting off on technicalities as a result? Him. Right? But no, every Republican accusation is a confession. Once again, the trial is going to take 2 years. We're going to have a very dangerous country if we're not allowed to do what we're entitled to do. Which, by the way, if they're criminals, you can, in the end, put them in prison. I understand that you don't want to pay for that, but if you want them off the streets, that's the way you have to do it. But guess what? You have to have a trial first. Well, not if we send them to another country. What? No. He made similar statements in social media posts on Monday in which he wrote, we cannot give everyone a trial because to do so would take, without exaggeration, 200 years. Well, that's why you have lots and lots of judges. Okay. No. It's not like that. Mr. Trump's remarks have drawn swift backlash. Representative Jonathan L. Jackson, Democrat of Illinois, wrote on social media, we can't give everyone a trial. Excuse me, what? That is straight up dictator talk. But of course, that's to be hashtag dictator. Due process isn't optional because it's inconvenient. This is the United States, not a banana republic. If you want to shred the Constitution, just say so. Well, no, don't say so. Get lost. Make shredding the Constitution dangerous again. Mr. Trump's comments came after the Supreme Court early on Saturday temporarily blocked the administration from deporting a group of Venezuelan migrants that it accused of being gang members under the expansive powers of a rarely invoked wartime law. And that's the Alien Enemies Act. We don't have time to discuss this today, but we'll get to it tomorrow. By the way, still more semantic games being played by the administration, and the courts are recognizing it. How they will respond to it, we have yet to see. But they're playing every kind of game possible to get around court orders.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, all right, we spent the time making you sad about the existence of incels instead, but Justice Putnam will bring you up to date on some of the latest stories, including what's up at the top here. Trump woke up to disastrous news as his approval plummets. Greg told you about that. Based on his horrible policies and massive public failures, you can't spend too much time talking about that. We'll see you tomorrow.